Hey guys, tonight we step back into the soggy, cobbled streets of the Dutch Golden Age, where powdered wigs are still optional, but social climbing through flower trading is very much in bloom. You're not a noble, not quite a pauper, but something in between, a tulip merchant. Yes, really, and as silly as it might sound to modern ears, you live and die by the color and curve of a flower bulb. It's just before dawn in 1636. The canals of Amsterdam lie still, cloaked in a silver fog. You wake to the sound of dripping eaves and a rooster that, let's be honest, sounds like he regrets all his life choices. Your eyes open reluctantly, greeted not by soft sheets, but by a lumpy straw mattress and the creaking ceiling beams above. There's a smell of coal smoke in the air, comforting in its own ashy way, and the cold is already creeping through the cracks in the shutters. You groan. Another day of guesswork, hope, and speculative gardening. You toss off the woolen blanket and plant your feet on the chilly floorboards. Somewhere downstairs, your maid is stoking the fire. Her name is Anna, and she's been with your family for 6 years. She's reliable, occasionally grumpy, and has very firm opinions about which pickled foods are best eaten on Fridays. Today is a market day, which means you'll need to be sharper than usual. There's a particular variety of tulip, Semper Augustus, that's being whispered about in every alehouse and apothecary. A single bulb might fetch more than your entire house, or it might fetch nothing. Historians still argue whether this hysteria was widespread, mass delusion, or just a few overexcited merchants losing perspective. You rise and shuffle toward the window, wiping the condensation away with your sleeve. Outside, the canal is motionless. A cart creaks by slowly, its wheels muffled by last night's rain. You see the faint glow of oil lamps still burning behind drawn curtains. Somewhere across the water, a dog barks, and you briefly consider the luxurious freedom of being a dog in 1636. No auctions, no balance sheets, no social disgrace from a failed bulb flip. The house smells faintly of yeast and cheese. Breakfast is a simple affair. Thick crusts of black bread, soft goat cheese, and something that could be yesterday's boiled turnips. Anna sets down your mug of small beer, a weak, cloudy brew you pretend to enjoy, with a thud. You nod in thanks and begin chewing. It's not good, but at least it's chewable. You flip through your ledger as you eat. The numbers are worrisome. Last week you purchased 3 bulbs of a new striped cultivar rumored to originate from a Persian garden. The seller was confident. Too confident, perhaps. You wrote his name down with a small doodle of a devil horn beside it. Tulip speculation, you remind yourself, isn't just about the flowers. It's about paper, promissory notes, options, futures. These aren't physical bulbs you're selling. They're dreams in parchment form, exchanged feverishly in smoke-filled back rooms. Historians still debate whether this was the birth of modern capitalism or simply the world's first economic fan fiction. You hear your youngest son shouting upstairs, something about his hat being possessed by demons. You sigh and finish your bread. The world outside is waking up now. A neighbor yells something cheerful in Dutch. A fishmonger pushes a cart of herring past your stoop, singing off-key. Today will be long. You'll walk the muddy path to the Tulip Exchange. You'll haggle with rival merchants, one of whom wears such enormous feathered hats you wonder if he's smuggling birds. You'll drink bitter coffee with men who lie for a living and smile while doing it. And if the stars align, you might come home with a signed agreement that means you're rich, at least until tomorrow's prices say otherwise. You stretch your arms over your head, bones popping like tiny musket shots. You're 42 years old and have the ankles of a man twice that. One of your fingers is permanently stained purple from last month's ink spill. Your eyes are tired, and you're pretty sure one of your molars is planning to defect. But still you rise. Out the door, into the damp, toward the canals and the crooked skyline of Amsterdam. All for tulips. You step inside your dimly lit dressing chamber, the air still cool from the night, and face a small wooden chest overflowing with fabrics. It's time to suit up, because in the tulip trade, appearance is almost as important as your flower inventory. You reach for your finest linen shirt first, crisp, white, and ironed so stiff it squeaks against your skin. Linen cultivation is a hallmark of the Low Countries. After all, and Dutch linen was prized even by French nobles. Historians still argue whether linen was more commonly home-woven or commercially produced, but you're content knowing your shirt cost half a bulb at last year's auction. Next up, woolen doublet. You slide one arm through a sleeve and pause. This thing is as snug as a pair of breeches stolen from a beaver. Wool traps heat, which is lovely on a cold morning, but makes you feel like a sweating cheese if the sun pops out. Still, the rich navy hue, dyed with imported woad, signals you're not the village idiot peddling weeds. Aside from tulips, Dutch merchants have a global reputation for cloth, turning threads into fortunes and occasionally into itchy nightmares. But the real star is your lace cuffs. You unwrap the delicate strips, fine enough to be almost see-through, threaded with gold for an extra touch of, "I'm doing well. Thank you." Lace was originally imported from Venice and Flanders, an expensive status symbol so coveted that some merchants coated their lace in scented oils to mask their sweat. Quirky rumor has it that certain gold-threaded laces were believed aphrodisiacs, though you suspect that's more tavern gossip than market fact. You fold the lace around your wrists, tying them with a silky ribbon, and can't help but smirk at your reflection. You look like you belong in a portrait hung in a gilded hall, not trudging through muddy streets to haggle over potted bulbs. And then there's your hat, a wide-brimmed black felt number with a single ostrich feather jutting out like a cockatoo's mohawk. Ostrich feathers were imported via Amsterdam's bustling ports, shipped from distant territories, an early example of global trade that made this city richer than many European courts. Historians still argue whether the feather's flair was more for sun protection or simple vanity. But for you, it's both functional and fashionable. The brim shields your eyes from early morning mist, while the feather tells rivals you've got taste, and hopefully enough profit to pay your debts. You glance down at your shoes, nail clogs with leather straps, polished to a dull shine. They're practical, waterproof, and make that characteristic clack on cobblestones that announces your arrival. It's not exactly gentle on the ears, but it beats wet stockinged feet. The smell of wet wood swirls around your ankles, reminding you that today could go either way. A life-changing fortune or heartbreak at a bulbless ledger. You run your fingers over the brass buttons of your doublet, each one stamped with a family crest, a tulip emerging from water. You inherited this crest from your father, who declared tulips would be the family's path to glory or ruin. Thus far, it's been a thrilling mix of both. You close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself at the exchange hall, bustling with traders, the air thick with smoke, steam from coffee, and the faint perfume of tulip petals. By now, your reflection stares back at you. Fabric layers that feel like armor, lace that trembles at every breath, and a hat perched at a jaunty angle. Lighting in this room is sparse. A single tallow candle flickers, casting big shadows that dance across the walls like restless dancers in a drunken mask. You adjust the feather so it doesn't block your view. Modern wisdom says a merchant's sight is his greatest asset. Though you suspect a crooked feather barely tips the scales when you're trading bubblegum, bright bulbs. A soft creak announces Anna's arrival. She sidles in, arms folded, and surveys your ensemble with a critical eye. "You look like the mayor's daughter," she mutters. Her voice is low, practical. She's the kind of maid who sees right through your status symbols. You grin crookedly and pat the lace at your cuffs. "Better to look overdressed than undersold," you reply with a wink. She snorts and turns away, but you catch her tying her own linen cap tighter. An unspoken acknowledgement that even the staff must present dignity in a city obsessed with appearances. Next, your sword belt. It's mostly decorative. Swords aren't for dueling every morning, but the polished steel hilt and embossed leather strap complete the look. Some merchants skip the weapon and opt for a fancy walking stick. You choose the sword because it jingles as you walk, acting like a walking ticker, announcing your confidence. Fringe voices whisper that some swords were actually blunt replicas meant only for show, but you earned this one in a barrel of port wine last winter, so it's very real. You lean closer to the candle flame and inhale. The mix of beeswax and tallow smells ancient and comforting in its own odd way. This ritual of dressing isn't just vanity, it's part of the mental preparation. You remind yourself that in a world where a single hot-blooded tulip bulb can fetch more than a craftsman's yearly wage, impression matters. Every thread's sheen, every ornamental flourish signals your competence and credibility. Once fully dressed, you stand tall before the cracked mirror. The candlelight highlights your determined jawline and the glint of silk ribbon at your neck. Your heart thumps, not just from the tight fit of your doublet, but from excitement. A day in the life of a tulip merchant is a heady dance between risk and reward, one you've willingly chosen. Before you leave, you pat your pockets. Fleece gloves for handling dusty bulb crates, a small leather pouch of coin, your scribal stylus and wax tablet tucked into an inside pocket. Even after years in the game, you still feel a thrill at the weight of these tools, symbols of your power to create deals, record debts, and maybe, just maybe, outsmart your rivals. Stepping to the door, you pause and breathe deeply. The lace cuffs brush your wrists like tiny, ticklish guards. You catch a final glimpse of yourself in the mirror and nod. All right, you murmur, voice soft and fatalistically determined. Let's sell some flowers. You open the door and step back into the dawn, feeling every detail of your ensemble settle around you. The frame creaks as it shuts behind you, and the world outside awaits, muddy cold, unpredictable, and utterly electrifying. You descend the groaning staircase with the care of a man who's learned the hard way that rushing on 17th century Dutch woodwork is an act of hubris. The scent of frying onions drifts up from the kitchen, a reminder that Anna's already started breakfast. You pause on the bottom step, the wooden banister still warm from her hand, and smile faintly. The house is awake. This narrow townhouse, sandwiched tightly between two identical neighbors, is your base of operations. Equal parts residence, office, and bragging rights. It's modest compared to canal mansions, but impressive for a tulip merchant of your rank. 2 floors, 1 servant, and a suspiciously leaky ceiling that only betrays itself during sermons or storms. Historians still argue whether tulip traders lived as lavishly as their profits implied, or if many, like you, reinvested everything back into bulbs and bravado. In the dining room, a table awaits you with slices of rye bread, a crock of butter, and that notorious Dutch cheese, hard enough to arm a militia. You slice it anyway, nearly chipping your tooth. Beside your plate, a ceramic mug filled with warm beer. Not the hearty ale of modern pub-goers, but the pale, yeasty, low-alcohol kind brewed just strong enough to kill the germs lurking in the canal-fed water supply. Ironically, even children drink it, which explains why little Peter next door once tried to sell you a worm-infested bulb while belching like a sailor. The butter is thick, slightly sour, made from cream churned the day before. Your fingers spread it mechanically, mind already racing through mental inventories. You got a few Semper Augustus bulbs in storage, so rare they're more rumor than reality. If you play it right, you could offload one today for a small house or a very large myth. Fringe pamphlets have even started printing poems about these striped miracles. 1 bulb, striped red as sin slash, will make you rich or damn your kin. Not exactly bedtime verse, but catchy. As you eat, Anna brushes past, setting down a folded note. From the grower, she mutters, "He wants payment for last week's delivery." You nod without looking. The growers, those patient men with dirt under their nails and hope in their spades, are both your lifeline and your liability. You need them to produce the bulbs. They need you to sell the fantasy. You glance at the note. The ink still smudged, rushed. He's probably cold and worried. After all, a failed crop can mean financial ruin. Tulip bulbs aren't like wheat or cabbage. You can't eat your losses. Well, you could technically, but boiled tulip is mostly regret flavored with desperation. Some fringe cookbooks claim tulip petals could be candied like rose hips, but that's a recipe best left in the famine drawer. Breakfast finished, you walk into the front room. Part parlor, part negotiation arena. A fireplace flickers in one corner, casting long shadows across a tulip painting hung just slightly crooked. It's a gaudy piece, probably commissioned by a rival to look more expensive than it is. That's part of the game. Every object in a tulip merchant's home is either a subtle boast or a diversion. You open a small wooden chest near the hearth, revealing a collection of bulb catalogs. Each page hand-illustrated, colors slightly faded from eager fingers and poor ink. The drawings are exquisite, showcasing tulips in impossible hues, blazing oranges, violent purples, whites streaked with crimson like fresh wounds. You finger through them, pausing at a recently acquired listing for a bizarre fringed tulip imported from the Ottoman Empire. Historians still argue how much the Ottoman varieties influenced Dutch tulip breeding, but there's no denying the exotic appeal helped fuel the obsession. Above the chest hangs your prized ledger, a thick-bound book marked with deals, debts, and dreams. Every page is dense with names, dates, and bulb types. You run your finger down a recent entry. Mr. Vandermage, 1 ex-Viceroy bulb, promised 600 guilders plus 2 barrels herring smoked. You smirk. In any other context, trading seafood for flowers might seem ridiculous. But here, in Amsterdam, in 1636, that's practically normal. The door suddenly creaks. A knock would have been polite, but clients rarely knock, especially those with anxious fingers and a fear of market crashes. You already know who it is. Jan the broker. He bursts in without waiting, puffing slightly and clutching his soggy parchment. "You've heard, yes?" he blurts. You arch an eyebrow. "Good morning to you, too." He waves the parchment. "Rumor says the Harlem Guild will block the next Semper auction. Say it's too volatile. Some suspect counterfeits." You take the parchment, eyes scanning the blotchy script. The room feels colder suddenly. If the Harlem Guild steps in, the whole speculative balloon might deflate. Prices would wobble. Traders would panic. You might just cry quietly in your feathered hat. Historians still argue. Jan mutters, slumping into a chair, whether it was Harlem's caution or Leiden's greed that cracked the bubble. But I say it's the painters. They've made those bulbs look too damn magical. You chuckle. He's not wrong. Half the obsession is visual. The idea that something so delicate, so fleeting, could be worth a fortune. It stirs the soul and empties the wallet. You lean against the mantel, the tulip painting now catching firelight like a false idol. Jan clears his throat. "Are we still meeting at the tavern?" You nod. "Noon. I'll bring the catalog. And the Viceroy bulb, if the roads are dry." He leaves with a grunt. You sit in the chair he just vacated. The indent is warm. The weight of the morning settles in. You glance back at your ledger, then out the window. A wagon rumbles past, its wheels spitting mud. A boy runs behind it, laughing, slipping in the muck. You sip the dregs of your breakfast beer. It's lukewarm now, yeasty and slightly bitter. You swallow anyway. The day is just beginning, and already you feel the thrum of the tulip market, the pulse of commerce, the whisper of fortune, the dull ache of risk behind your eyes. Outside, church bells toll once, then twice. Time to prepare. You rise slowly, stretching your legs, feeling the fabric of your doublet shift like armor. Today, you'll make someone believe in the impossible, or lose a month's rent trying. The walk to your storage house is short, but in these damp Dutch winters, it feels longer than it is. The canal wind bites through your woolen cloak, slipping beneath your collar with all the elegance of a thief. Your boots strike cobblestones slick with morning drizzle. It hasn't rained, exactly, just enough mist to make everything feel vaguely like soup. As you trudge, you pass familiar storefronts slowly creaking open. A baker's wife yawns as she flips a fresh loaf onto a wooden shelf. The scent of warm spice and yeast momentarily cuts through the wet chill, making your stomach regret the hard cheese. 2 boys race past you, each holding a small potted plant. Tulips? No, hyacinths. Less temperamental, far less fashionable. The storage house squats at the end of the lane, unassuming and gray. To anyone else, it looks like a fishmonger's shed, and that's exactly the point. Inside, however, it's organized with almost military precision. Wooden crates line the walls, each marked in chalk with codes only you and Anna understand. SAR3. Damp. Isolate. That's Semper Augustus. Room 3. Water damage batch to be quarantined. You strike a flint and light a lantern. Its glow reveals row after row of earthenware jars, each filled with bulbs packed in sand. This method, storing tulip bulbs in cool, dry sand, isn't new, but you've made refinements. A few drops of vinegar in the mixture. Some say Dieter's mold. Others say it ruins the bulb entirely. Historians still argue whether vinegar was tulip wizardry or farmer folklore. You pull out one particular jar with great care. Inside, a single firm bulb. Its papery skin is slightly pinkish, veined with darker hues. The weight is good. You roll it gently between your palms, try not to imagine the weight of the money it might bring or lose. Semper Augustus, the holy grail of tulips, named after a Roman emperor, striped like a marble cathedral, and so rare it's whispered about in church pews and wine dens alike. Some claim only 12 bulbs exist in all of Holland. Others say that's part of the con. You blow gently across its surface and feel the familiar thrill. Hope. Not just personal wealth, but the collective madness of a nation wrapped in fragile petals. It's a ridiculous thing if you think about it too long, so you don't. Instead, you carry the jar to your small writing desk in the back corner. You unroll a new parchment, ink your quill, and begin sketching the bulb's details. Every merchant worth his salt keeps his own records, far more truthful than what's sold on public posters. Your drawing is crude, nothing like the illustrators use for catalogs, but accurate. The outer layers show minor spotting, but no soft patches, no mold. Root nub is intact, no visible worms. Next to the sketch, you write, "Reserved for Van Haren, pending tavern offer." You pause. That's an optimistic note. Van Haren is known to bargain hard, and then harder still. Last month, he walked away from a deal because the bulb wasn't tinged with enough flame. You're still not sure what that meant. Footsteps outside. You freeze. Then a knock, sharp and familiar. Anna enters without waiting, her scarf soaked from the drizzle. "There's a letter," she says, handing it to you. "From Antwerp." Your heart does a little somersault. Antwerp means foreign buyers. Foreign buyers mean real coin. None of this smoked herring and promises economy you've been bartering in. You crack the seal. The handwriting is tight and formal. "To the esteemed merchant of Haarlem, I write on behalf of Monsieur Laroche, who seeks a sample of the recently rumored crown of fire tulip. Enclosed, you will find a deposit of 50 florins as good faith. Should the bulb match description, Monsieur is prepared to offer a mirror with silver inlay and an additional 400 florins. Awaiting your reply, D. Vermeer." You stare at the note, then at the jar in your hand. The Crown of Fire is a made-up name, but this bulb could pass for it if the buyer has never seen one. Historians still argue whether merchants invented names outright to inflate value, or whether the buyers themselves demanded poetic branding. Either way, deception was as common as rain. You weigh the options. Send the bulb now, take the money, and never speak of it again, or hold out for the tavern deal. But what if Van Haren backs out again, citing lack of spiritual energy, or whatever nonsense he's embraced this week? Anna reads your silence. "Sell it abroad," she says flatly. "Let the French chase fairy tales for once." You nod, slowly, then hesitate. "But what if it really is a crown of fire?" You murmur. She smirks, then charge double. You both laugh quietly, the kind of laugh that keeps you human in a trade built on illusion. You tuck the jar into a padded box and seal the letter with your personal stamp, a tiny tulip etched into wax. You'll send it later today. With that decided, you return to the inventory shelf. You still need one bulb to bring to the tavern meeting. Something good, but not great. Eye-catching, but safe. A Rembrandt, maybe, or a Switzer's. You select one at random, careful to check for rot, then pack it in a smaller box wrapped with cloth. By the time you leave the storage house, the sky has started to clear. A single shaft of sunlight pierces the gray, striking the wet cobblestones like spilled gold. You squint upward. It feels like an omen, but of what you're not sure. On the way back, You pass a group of merchants huddled around a public notice board. One reads aloud, "Prices rise again in Leiden. Sepper bulbs now estimated at 5,000 guilders." Gasps follow. One man curses under his breath. Another laughs too loudly. You keep walking. You've learned that eavesdropping only encourages madness. You already live in a city where flowers are more valuable than farmland. That's enough insanity for one morning. Back home, Anna is already prepping your coat. The fine one, with the brass buttons. You raise an eyebrow. "You want to look successful," she says. You smile, but not too successful. She shrugs. "We're Tulip people. We're all liars, one way or another." You laugh again, this time louder. She's right. You step back in the narrow streets of Harlem, cloaked in your finest wool coat with its brass buttons gleaming faintly. The bulb you selected, carefully packed in its swaddling of soft cloth, rests inside a modest wooden box under your arm. The tavern is only a short walk from your home, but every step feels like a performance now. You nod to acquaintances with a composed smile, ignoring the nagging suspicion that someone, somewhere, is always watching. It's a strange thing, reputation. Not entirely under your control, yet more valuable than the bulbs you carry. In this city, even a whisper that you're falling behind on deals or holding rotting bulbs can destroy you faster than a poor harvest. You reach the tavern just as the wooden sign above creaks in motion with the wind. The Gouden Tulp, the Golden Tulip. An appropriate venue, if a little too on the nose. Inside, the air is warm, thick with the scent of spiced wine and roasted parsnips. Most tables are already occupied. Merchants gather here like bees around syrup, trading gossip more than goods. You scan the room. Van Haren is seated in the corner, just as agreed. He's swaddled in a ridiculously large fur collar that makes him look like a very wealthy bear. He sees you and raises a pewter mug in greeting. His eyes, pale, watery blue, miss nothing. You approach with casual calm and sit opposite him. Before a word is exchanged, you slide the wooden box onto the table and lift the lid just enough for him to peek inside. He leans forward, eyes narrowing, and then exhales a low whistle. "Switzerse," he says. Or am I wrong? Switzerse, third bloom, strong lineage. No blight, no fray, you reply. You give no additional details. He'll ask if you want them. It's part of the dance. He picks up his mug again, but doesn't drink. "And you're offering this to me first?" You smile, slow and deliberate. "Only because you've got the best palate in Harlem." He snorts. Flattery smells cheap. You shrug. "So, what does a moldy bulb?" He chuckles. "Fair." The negotiation begins. It is long drawn out and utterly exhausting. You discuss things no rational person should waste breath on. The purity of the stripe, the angle of the bloom, the family line traced back to the fabled Duke van Thal. Historians still argue whether tulip lineage was ever accurately recorded or just creatively invented by desperate merchants. Honestly, you lean toward the latter. Eventually, a price emerges: 325 florins, a black lacquered writing box, and, oddly, a barrel of salted herring. You blink. The herring is non-negotiable. Van Haren grins. "My cousin's wedding. The bride's obsessed." You almost laugh. Almost. But you don't want to risk offending his pride. Pride is the real currency here. The deal is sealed with a handshake and a drink. You try the tavern's warm, spiced ale, which tastes like someone boiled tree bark in a wine barrel. But it's hot, and that's enough. You chat a little longer, letting the tension ease. Van Haren tells you about a rumor swirling through Amsterdam. A German prince recently traded a painting, an actual oil canvas of a ship at sea, for 3 bulbs. "A Rembrandt," he adds with a smug tone. You raise an eyebrow. "Rembrandt doesn't paint ships." "Exactly," he says, tapping his nose. You leave before noon, your box lighter, but your coin pouch slightly heavier. Not bad. The lacquer box will sell well too, or make a nice gift if you're feeling sentimental, which you rarely are. On the way home, the streets are bustling now. Children chase each other between the legs of distracted adults. A stray dog trots past you, carrying what appears to be someone's discarded mitten. 2 women haggle loudly over wool fabric, pricey imported stuff dyed in colors that only the rich or foolish can afford. Your path takes you by the central square, where a chalkboard has been erected in front of the exchange hall. You glance at the fresh scribbles. New record. One Viceroy bulb traded for a townhouse in Alkmaar. Owner claims once-in-a-lifetime bloom. You shake your head slowly. It's happening faster now. The madness is accelerating. Not that you mind. Madness feeds your family. Still, you can't help but notice the strain in others' eyes. Fear lurks behind their smiles. The fear that they've bought in too late. That they'll be left holding bulbs no one wants when the curtain finally falls. You pass a preacher on the corner. He's shouting scripture and waving his arms like an angry heron. "Vanity of vanities," he cries. "All is vanity. The lilies of the field shall not buy your bread." Some people stop to listen. Most walk past. You pause just a moment too long, and he locks eyes with you. "You, sir," he bellows. "You deal in the devil's blossoms." You smile politely and keep walking. But his words trail after you like mist. Devil's blossoms. A catchy phrase. Could be a name for a new cultivar. Back home, Anna has already returned from the apothecary. She's hunched over the hearth, stirring something that smells like mint and vinegar. You kiss her on the cheek and place the pouch of coins on the table with a theatrical clink. She eyes it. "Enough for the mirror?" You nod. "And the herring." She groans. "Don't tell me it was Van Haren again." He drives a hard bargain. He drives you mad. You laugh, and together you sit down for a late midday meal. Soft bread, roasted carrots, and a boiled egg. The fire crackles. Outside, the light begins to dim. You glance at the window. There's a subtle glow, like a storm is gathering or something just behind the clouds. You exhale long and slow. For now, things are stable. For now, you're afloat. But in the distance, you can feel the tide shifting. The bloom can't last forever. Nothing this bright ever does. Morning comes again, and this time the house is colder. A draft sneaks in through the warped kitchen window, and you make a mental note to ask Jan to seal it with pitch before next week's frost. You don't linger in bed long. There's a growing list of deliveries to make, and a scheduled visit from a particularly dramatic buyer from Delft who insists on inspecting all bulbs under natural sunlight only. After breaking your fast, coarse rye bread and a smear of sheep's cheese, you slip into your work apron, the thick leather one with flecks of dried peat and wax. Your hands already know what to do. You're back in the cellar before the sun has climbed high enough to reach the windows, carefully opening a row of burlap sacks filled with the day's consignments. You count aloud. 1, 2, 3 Switzers for Viceroys, 1 red line with minor bruising on the tip, likely bumped during transit, and a curious outlier. You lift it to eye level. It's striped differently. Pale flame-like streaks run from root to crown. It's unlike the rest. This, you realize with a hum of interest, might be a broken tulip. The holy grail of the trade. Broken tulips, those mysterious, feathered, and flamed petals, are both prize and puzzle. Historians still argue whether the breaking was caused by soil chemistry, careful cultivation, or something far less pleasant. A virus, later known as the mosaic virus, which weakens the plant over time, even as it creates dazzling patterns. But that knowledge won't be discovered for nearly 300 years. For now, you simply know these flowers are pure gold in bloom and dangerously unpredictable in growth. You tuck it aside, carefully labeling it with a wax tag. Unverified, possible break. You'll monitor it separately, track its development, and decide whether to feature it in next month's ledger or keep it hidden a little longer. In this market, secrecy is power. The rest of the bulbs are organized by variety, wrapped in soft cloth, and placed into wooden trays lined with dry straw. You hum as you work, a half-remembered melody Anna sang when she made lavender soap last spring. It helps block out the silence. Tulip cellars, while sacred, are eerie places, so full of value and yet so lifeless. Just as you're finishing the inventory, there's a knock at the back door. It's Willem, the errand boy from the docks, wearing his usual patchy hat and boots 2 sizes too large. He's clutching a damp scroll, rain from the river mist, probably, and hands it to you with a toothy grin. "From Delft, sir. The lady says she'll arrive at noon sharp. Wants tea?" You raise an eyebrow. Tea. He nods. With honey. You sigh. Fine. Go fetch some from the grocer. Tell them to add it to my account, and no licorice again. He vanishes down the alley, his boots clapping against the stones. You take the scroll inside and unroll it on the table. It's from Lady Van Drunen, an eccentric widow who inherited her late husband's shipping fortune and promptly invested half of it into Tulip futures. She is equal parts visionary and menace. Last spring, she outbid 3 men at the Holland Exchange and shouted glory to the garden while waving her bonnet in the air. She wants to inspect 4 bulbs. She's already named them: Tulipina, Crimson Wing, Sir Petal, and Mr. Fire. You can't help but admire her flair. You mark her choices and begin preparing a display in the front parlor. White linen table, hand mirror, notes on bloom prediction, and the best china cups for the tea. Noon arrives like a trumpet blast. Lady Van Drunen does not knock. She enters. She arrives, swooping into your home with the grace of a ship's figurehead and a cloud of cinnamon perfume. She's wrapped in a teal cloak trimmed with embroidered foxes, and her hat boasts 3 towering ostrich feathers. She removes her gloves slowly, dramatically, like an actress in a play only she understands. "My dear merchant," she booms, "let us see if your darlings are as splendid as your reputation." You bow slightly, gesturing toward the parlor. "Please, my lady." What follows is an hour of carefully orchestrated madness. She sniffs the bulbs. She squints. She taps one and hums. You explain the soil acidity of Leiden, the rainfall estimates for spring, and the lineage of Crimson Wing, though you omit the fact that its grandparent bulb was once stored in a rat-infested bakery cellar. She listens intently, occasionally tilting her head like a curious crow. At last, she stands. "I'll take Sir Petal. The name is hideous. I'll rename it Prince Blush." "Very well," you reply. "And Tulipina, a noble choice. And Mr. Fire." You hesitate. "He hasn't bloomed yet." "I don't care." She smiles, suddenly very serious. "I want him before anyone else sees him. Wrap them for me, and I'll pay triple if I'm satisfied by February." You agree, and she signs a receipt with a flourish, her signature a loop-de-loop that resembles a bird diving. She takes her tea, nods, and leaves just as abruptly as she arrived. You collapse into a chair. The scent of cinnamon still hangs in the air. Later that afternoon, Anna joins you in the parlor. She raises an eyebrow. "The Widow Gale." You nod. She renamed a bulb again. She always does. At least she didn't insist on planting one in a velvet pouch like last time. You both laugh. The tension eases. Outside, the wind rises, rattling the shutters like restless fingers. You return to the cellar before dusk. You check on the possible broken bulb. Still firm, still promising, but something in your chest stirs. A small, annoying voice. What if this is the peak? What if next spring it all unravels? You close the cellar door behind you and light a candle. One day at a time, you remind yourself. For now, the petals are still closed. The bloom has not yet come. The next morning begins with a strange stillness. The usual clamor of carts, fishmongers, and street peddlers seems muffled by a thick coastal fog that clings to every shutter and chimney like a cat that won't be shooed. You stand at your window, sipping weak chicory coffee, watching as the town of Haarlem slowly emerges in ghostly layers. You have a full schedule, a meeting with the Bulb Guild, letters to answer from buyers in Alkmaar, and a stop by the engraver's workshop. But none of it happens right away. First, you must deal with the pigeon. It's perched on the windowsill, puffed up like a nobleman's wig, bearing a tiny scroll tied to its foot with red thread. You open the pane gently, muttering, "Good morning, messenger of minor fortune," and retrieve the note. The bird coos once and flaps away, presumably toward another rooftop covered in yesterday's breadcrumbs. The letter is from Hendrik Voss, your friend and occasional rival in the bulb world. He's inviting you to a private gathering that evening at the home of one of the city's more flamboyant collectors, Cornelis van Heemskerk. The subject, a new rare bloom recently smuggled from Constantinople. You blink. Constantinople. That's not a place from which things just arrive. That's a place from which legends crawl slowly into Europe on the backs of caravans and boastful sailors. A tulip from there could stir quite the excitement. You roll the parchment tight and tuck into your sleeve. Something tells you tonight's visit won't be simple admiration and tea. In tulip circles, private viewing often translates to bidding war disguised as polite conversation. You head into the street, boots muffled on the wet cobblestones. Harlem's market is alive, if subdued. You pass the barrel maker, who grunts a good morning, and the tailor's apprentice, who's already threading buttons onto a velvet doublet. Everyone here has some link to the flower trade now, some obvious, some not. The baker? He sells pastries shaped like tulips. The apothecary? He's convinced tulip petals cure toothache, which is both medically dubious and economically absurd. Still, people buy them. Even the beggars mutter about bulbs between coughs. You reach the engraver's shop just as he's unlocking the door. Garrett is short, bespectacled, and fond of chewing mint leaves between sentences. You've come to approve the final sketch of your spring catalog. He ushers you inside, proudly unveiling a woodcut of 6 tulip heads, each labeled in calligraphy: Admiral Van Enquezen, Gouda Flame, Merry Widow, and 3 others. They look decent, but something is off. The third one, you say, pointing, "That's supposed to be my Switzer. The streaking is too clean. It needs more unpredictability." He squints. "You want uglier? More natural?" He sighs and begins to adjust the carving. You sit and wait, eyes drifting to his walls where rejected sketches hang like museum rejects. One bulb looks suspiciously like a pineapple. Another resembles a fried egg. "I tried something new with the shading," he says, "but the ink kept bleeding. Wood doesn't like damp." You nod. Neither do bulbs. Outside, a muffled commotion begins. You step to the doorway and peer into the misty street. A boy is running, waving a copy of the Harlem Gazette. People are gathering around, eyes wide. You call out to a neighbor. "What is it?" He shouts back. "Prices are up again, double." Double. The air thickens, not just with fog, but with potential. Everyone senses it. The mania swells like a wave, just offshore. You head back inside. "Hurry up with the sketch, Garrett. I thought you had until spring." Spring just got a lot closer. By mid-afternoon, the fog begins to lift, revealing a city transformed. The taverns buzz with speculation. The barber tells customers tulips are a safer bet than houses. Even the church bells feel like they're ringing in the new era of floral fortune. But you know, fool, you've seen this before. Rises, collapses, the fickle love of the market. You tuck away your rising excitement like a flask of brandy, potent, dangerous, and best enjoyed in moderation. As dusk approaches, you change into your finer coat, the deep plum one with the polished bone buttons. You brush your boots, scrape your nails clean, and practice your neutral expression in the mirror, the one that says, "I'm intrigued but not desperate." The Van Heemskerk residence is exactly what you expect, garishly opulent. Its windows gleam, lanterns glow, and a string quartet hums in the vestibule. Inside, men with powdered wigs and women with neck ruffs the size of wagon wheels sip cordial and speak in exaggerated hushes. You find Hendrik by the punch bowl, nursing a glass of something suspiciously green. "She's in the drawing room," he whispers. "Who?" "The tulip. It's displayed on a velvet pillow under a glass dome. The petals are pale yellow with violent red flames licking up from the base. It looks like something born in a fairy tale and raised by thunderstorms." "Does it have a name?" you ask. He grins. "They're calling it the Vorzuchtigmagd." You chuckle. "The fevered virgin?" "Subtle. Apparently, it bloomed only once, last spring, then withered." You lean in. "So no verified offsets?" "None." You nod slowly. That changes everything. A one-bloom wonder is either the crown jewel of a collection or a financial sinkhole wrapped in petals. Still, you feel the pull. That creeping obsession that defines tulip collectors. You imagine the flower in your own catalog. The whispering bids. The scribbled contracts. Historians still argue whether this fever was truly about the flowers or just a fantasy they offered. Wealth, legacy, a little beauty in a world always threatening to fall apart. You suspect the truth lies somewhere between. The night ends with no bids, just quiet admiration and veiled negotiations. You leave just before midnight, the image of that tulip burned behind your eyes like a candle afterglow. As you walk home, the streets are quieter. The fog has returned, softer now. You breathe it in, the damp, hopeful air of a city that believes in miracles, one bulb at a time. The next morning, your boots land with a reluctant thud on the floorboards. The fog's returned, but this time it feels more symbolic than meteorological. You're still thinking about the fevered virgin. That tulip, pale gold with red flames, has carved a space in your mind like a ghost that refuses to be dismissed. It's both an opportunity and a trap. And you, well, you're just a merchant trying to sleep at night. You shuffle to your desk, open the ledger, and start doing the mental math. If you were to make a bid, how high could you go without endangering your current contracts? Your holdings? Your sanity? There's a number, but it keeps wobbling depending on your mood and the quality of your breakfast. You settle for porridge and salted herring. Humble meals are oddly comforting when fortunes rise and fall on things that bloom and die in weeks. Your housekeeper, Johanna, eyes your portion and raises an eyebrow. Saving money or losing appetite? She asks. Both, probably, you reply, sipping weak beer instead of risking the water. But it's the tulip that's eating most of my thoughts. She shrugs. Tulips don't feed anyone, except the pigs when the trade goes bad. She's not wrong. In fact, you recall the rumors from last winter that some desperate soul tried to cook a stew with bulbs when the market dipped. Turned out to be toxic. Not exactly a tale you include in catalogs, but still a cautionary reminder. Despite your better judgment, you head to the exchange. Harlem's tulip trade operates a bit like a chaotic opera. Shouts, gestures, dramatic exits, and too many florins changing hands over paper promises. Here, deals are made not for flowers, but for futures. Contracts sealed with words, handshakes, and a good deal of delusion. You duck under a low arch into the smoky hall. Soot-black beams above, crushed straw underfoot, the smell of tobacco and ambition heavy in the air. This is not the court of kings. It's a backroom of speculation, laughter, and carefully worded contracts. You catch sight of Peter Van Slooten in the corner, a man with a voice like a goose and a mustache that seems to curl tighter with each florin he makes. He waves you over, flipping through a small stack of promissory notes. "Did you see her last night?" he says, without preamble. "The tulip. What else?" He fans himself with a paper that reads, "2 Switzers. March delivery." Van Heemskerk has no idea what he's sitting on. "I offered a Rembrandt sketch and 3 mature bulbs." He laughed. You keep your face neutral. Maybe he knows it won't bloom again. Peter shrugs. Maybe. Or maybe he's waiting for a fool with more money than sense. You eye the papers in his hand. Any interesting trades today? A few. Viceroy bulbs going for 500 apiece. And someone sold a full lot of Gouda flames for the price of a canal boat. You chuckle. I hope the boat floats better than the bulbs grow. He lowers his voice. There's talk of government involvement. Clerks whispering about the States General regulating the market. Now that's interesting. Historians still argue whether any real laws were enforced during the tulip boom, or if it was mostly public outrage and late-night sermons. But even the idea of oversight causes a ripple. You nod. Nothing kills a good gamble like rules. Or common sense. Peter add with a wink. You spend the next hour watching deals unfold. A young merchant named Anthony nearly cries when his Vermeer blue tulip fails to meet the reserve price. Meanwhile, a widow in her 60s walks away with a deed for a farm after bartering 6 bulbs she'd kept from her late husband's garden. The madness isn't universal, but it's spreading. You leave before noon. The exchange drains you, and you need to visit the garden. Not for work this time, just to see something real. Your small plot, just outside Harlem, sits behind a modest gate. It's early spring, so most of the ground is still stubborn and gray. But here and there, green shoots pierce the soil like little heralds of what's to come. You kneel, brush the dirt away from one emerging stem. This one's a Switzer, reliable, streaked with blood red come May. You've known it 3 seasons. It never fails to bloom. You talk to it, just a whisper. "Don't worry, I haven't forgotten you." The truth is, amid all the noise, You miss the quiet part of the tulip world, the digging, the trimming, the waiting. A tulip is patient. Humans aren't. Later, back at home, you sit with your catalog drafts. You add a note to the margins. Reserve space for new Constantinople entry. Potential page 3 feature. Pending bid. It's reckless, sure, but it helps you imagine the future. That's what this whole trade is about. Really, hope wrapped in petals. That night, you dine alone, candlelight flickering off the pewter plate. Bread, cheese, and a little fig jam. You find yourself doodling tulip heads on the napkin. You wonder, what if you walked away from all of it? Sold your bulbs, bought a boat, moved to Antwerp, traded in salt or textiles. But the moment passes. You love the flowers too much. Or maybe it's the thrill. Hard to tell anymore. Before bed, you open your window. Fog again, but higher up this time, like a curtain about to rise. You smile. Tomorrow, you'll write to Van Heemskerk. Not to buy, just to inquire, which of course is the same thing. You wake before sunrise, which for a tulip merchant isn't unusual. The best bulbs are dreamed of in darkness and chased at first light. You light a stub of candle and squint at the parchment you left beside your bed. A draft of the letter to Van Heemskerk. The ink's smudged from where your elbow must have drifted in the night. An accidental signature of your indecision. You dip the quill again. A simple inquiry. Nothing more. No bid. No promises. Just the suggestion of interest, the casual flirtation of trade. In this era, it's as intimate as courtship. Downstairs, Johanna has already laid out your breakfast. Warm bread, hard cheese, and the last of the spiced butter. She eyes the sealed letter in your hand. So you're doing it then? I'm asking. That's all. She snorts softly. And he's asking for your house, your books, and your grandchildren in return. You laugh, but she's not far off. The market has grown hungry, bloated on anticipation and whispers. A fevered virgin now is not the same tulip it was 5 years ago, or even 5 weeks ago. You dispatch the letter with a young courier, Tomas, barely 12, with a freckled face and feet too large for his sandals. He's quick and quiet, which in this business is worth more than literacy. He disappears into the Harlem mist like a note tucked under history's doormat. While you wait, you return to your ledgers. Some are well organized, bids, yields, germination cycles. Others are more poetic, sketches of bulbs, pressed petals, price predictions that sound suspiciously like horoscopes. That's the thing with tulip merchants, half scientist, half soothsayer. One sheet lists your current bulb inventory by bloom date. Late April stars include the colorin, the red peacock, and your personal favorite, a lesser-known purple-striped whitdrack. You've only got 3 bulbs left of it, and you're half tempted to never sell them. While scanning the sheet, you catch a name that hadn't been there before, probably added in haste the night before. Constantinople, 1 bulb, condition unknown. Just a whisper of possibility. By mid-morning, Tomas returns. No letter. Instead, a single tulip bulb wrapped in wax cloth and tied with string. Your breath catches. It can't be, but it is. A fevered virgin. Not the one from the exhibition. This bulb hasn't bloomed yet. No outer markings, no telltale streaks. Just potential. Just danger. Just everything. There's a small note folded into the cloth. Consider alone. Perhaps you'll see what I saw. VH. You reread it 3 times. Alone? That's not common. In fact, it's almost unheard of. Which means Van Heemskerk is either mad or calculating, or both. Historians still argue whether he was simply trying to rattle the market or quietly establish a price anchor before the season exploded. Either way, you've been caught in the middle of it. You spend the next hour in complete silence, the bulb resting in the cradle of your palm like an egg full of rumors. It's heavy for its size, firm but slightly pitted. A merchant's eye sees the imperfections first, but your gut tells you there's something inside. What would you even do with it? Grow it? Trade it? Display it like a relic? Instead, you carry it to your study and set it on a velvet-lined tray beside a small hourglass. You don't have a reliquary, so this will have to do. Afternoon passes in a daze. You draft new catalog pages. One possible Constantinople hybrid. You scribble in the margins. Origin disputed. You already know which clients you'll mention it to, and which you won't. The bulb, meanwhile, doesn't move. Of course it doesn't, but still you check on it 3 times. Like it might whisper something if the candlelight hits just right. That evening, Peter visits unannounced. He's wearing a new waistcoat and smugness like perfume. Word is Van Heemskerk's made a move, he says before even sitting down. Did he send it to you? You say nothing, which is its own answer. Peter grins. I knew it. You always get the good ones. That lucky streak of yours. I think it's a test, you reply. Oh, it's always a test, he says, helping himself to a glass of your elderberry wine. But here's the real question. Will you trade it? You look at the bulb again. Would you? He leans back. Depends. On how much I like my house. Later, after he's gone, you sit alone in the lamplight. The bulb casts a small shadow across the desk, almost like a trick of perspective, bigger than it is. You feel the pressure, not just of profit and loss, but of history folding in on itself. You remember a sermon you once overheard about the dangers of false idols, the perils of obsession. You're starting to understand. Still, you can't sleep. So you write a new note, addressed to yourself this time. Plant if brave, wait if wise, trade if foolish. You fold it and slip it beneath the bulb like a pact. Somewhere in the distance, bells toll for vespers. A reminder that tulip madness might be the least of this world's concerns. But tonight, for you, it's everything. The fevered virgin bulb sits on your desk like it owns the house. You wake to find it exactly where you left it, silent, inert, maddening. Your wife says it looks no different than any other bulb in the garden. She's not wrong, but she's also not a tulip merchant. You see the phantom stripes already, blooming in your imagination like flames. Today is market day, and market day means secrets, bargains, and an unholy amount of speculative whispering. You wrap the bulb in soft linen and place it inside a lacquered wooden box with a brass clasp, not unlike a jewelry casket. It feels ceremonial, like transporting a relic from a saint's shrine to a church of desperate men in wool hats. The Holland Bulb Exchange is nothing like the open markets of fishmongers and potters. No shouting, no haggling, just a low hum of voices, punctuated by bursts of laughter or sudden silence when someone says something too interesting. You slip into the crowd like a fish into a school. You catch sight of familiar faces. Willem the banker, eyes darting like a kestrel. Old Marta, who once sold off her husband's entire wine cellar for a single parrot tulip. And Frederick, who wears his velvet hat too high and his confidence even higher. You take a breath, then slide the box from your coat. Just slightly. Just enough to let the glint of brass catch a little morning light. It doesn't take long. Is that? Someone asks, already leaning in. You shrug. Could be. Now you've done it. Like blood in the water. Within minutes, you've drawn a ring of curiosity. Some feigned disinterest, glancing sideways while pretending to examine a stack of price sheets. Others are more direct. What's its lineage? Willem asks. Possibly Heemskerk. Possibly Constantinople. Possibly wind and wishful thinking. You reply. A snort from behind. So it's nothing, someone mutters. And yet no one walks away. This is how it begins, not with proclamations, but with possibility. You remember what Van Heemskerk wrote. Perhaps you'll see what I saw. And you do. You see gold-leafed ledgers, warm hearths, respect. You also see ruin. But not yet. Not today. Will you auction it? Marta finally asks. You consider the question like a chess player eyeing an open diagonal. I'm just letting it breathe, you say. Tulips need air, after all. The crowd chuckles, but it's nervous laughter. They know the game. Everyone here is playing something. But no one wants to be the fool who buys a dud or misses a miracle. Historians still argue whether bulbs were ever truly traded for entire estates or if those were inflated rumors spread to attract more buyers. What's not debated is that fortunes were indeed made and unmade in whispers just like this one. You keep the box visible all morning. You don't name a price. That's key. Mystery blooms better when not pinned to coin. By noon, 3 offers have been made, all unofficial, all vague enough to deny later. One man even offers you a stake in a merchant ship bound for Batavia. You're tempted briefly, but the bulb feels heavier now in your pocket, like it's aware of its own growing myth. You find a quiet bench behind the tavern and sit for a moment, watching pigeons argue over a dropped heel of bread. A boy approaches, barefoot, ginger-haired, breathless. "Message," he says, holding out a folded parchment with a red wax seal you don't recognize. You open it. "Meet at St. Bavo's Bell Tower. Bring the bulb. Come alone. No signature." You look up, but the boy's already gone. It's the sort of message that should make you nervous. Instead, it makes your heartbeat speed up with curiosity, as if you've just been cast into a play you didn't know you'd auditioned for. You walk to St. Bavo's slowly, like you have nowhere urgent to be. Inside the cathedral, the light filters down in beams, cutting through incense like theater fog. The bell tower is quiet. Dust dances in the air. A black-cloaked figure waits near the stairs. "Do you have it?" the voice asks, low, masculine, unfamiliar. You nod. He doesn't reach for it. Instead, he gestures to the corner, where a velvet cloth has been spread over a makeshift table. Upon it, 2 bulbs, neither as large as yours, but one with faint purple streaks curling across its outer skin like veins. "These are unproven," he says, "but I believe one is a cousin of yours. Crossbred, one of mine." You realize what this is. Not an ambush, a proposition. "I want to compare lineage," he says. "And if they match, we trade. You keep one, I keep one. We share the story." You hesitate. No money, no contract, just bulbs and a story. But stories in this market are currency. You unwrap yours. He leans in, careful not to touch. "Van Heemskirk," he mutters. "Definitely. And yes, I see it. The curvature of the root base. The fine veining. Could be twin lines." He unwraps one of his. You nod slowly. "Too young to bloom?" He sighs. "Sadly, yes. But give a season. You consider. This man is a rival. Or a genius. Possibly both. But something tells you, this isn't a swindle. It's reverence." You make the trade. Later, walking home, you realize you just traded a potential fortune for a theory. Johanna, predictably, says nothing when you explain it. Just pours you tea and sits beside you, gently shaking her head. "I married a man," she says, "but you've become a gardener of ghosts." You smile. She's not wrong. And yet, when you look at the new bulb, lighter, smoother, striped like a violet's breath, you feel calm. It's not just the money. It's the chase, the mystery, the whisper of what might bloom. You don't sleep much that night. Not because of worry, but because of curiosity. You lie in bed, listening to the slow creak of the shutters and the occasional distant hoot of an owl, while your mind unspools scenarios about the new bulb resting in your workroom drawer. Will it sprout stripes like lightning bolts? Or remain modest and mute, never revealing its lineage? You can't know. But that's the magic of tulips, isn't it? Each bulb is both a lie and a promise. At sunrise, you're already outside, feet crunching frost, scoping out the best plot for planting. Johanna watches from the window, arms folded, a steaming mug in hand. She's still not sure whether to be amused or worried. Back inside, your breakfast is a slice of rye bread, a few walnuts, and a strip of smoked herring. Simple fuel. You eat quickly, mouth still tasting of salt and anticipation. Then you begin writing. Contracts, offers, inquiries. Today isn't about buying or selling bulbs. Today is about managing the machinery of reputation. You're not just a tulip merchant. You're a name. And names need tending, just like flowers. Your first letter is to an Amsterdam collector known for hoarding rare specimens the way children hoard marbles. You hint that you've acquired something potentially more striking than the Semper Augustus. You don't overpromise. You don't describe the bulb at all. That's the trick. Let their mind paint something better than reality ever could. Next, you write to your cousin in Leiden. He has connections at the university, and you want one of the professors to take a look at the bulb, discreetly. Academic interest raises value. Then you draft a short note to the mysterious man from the bell tower. Your specimen has been planted. We'll know by spring. I'll keep you informed. You don't include your name. If he's as smart as he seemed, he won't need it. Outside, a light snow begins to fall, early for the season. You pause to watch it drift onto the tulip beds, white flakes vanishing into the dark soil like secrets. That afternoon, you receive a visitor. He's short, stooped, with a beard like a bird's nest and hands stained with ink. He introduces himself as Peter, a notary from Delft. "I heard," he says, "you might have something interesting." You raise an eyebrow. "From whom?" He smiles. "People who whisper loudly." You let him in. Peter doesn't ask to see the bulb. He wants something stranger, a story. "Tell me how you got it," he says, pulling out a quill. You're tempted to fabricate, spin a tale of Ottoman gardens and forbidden trades. But something about Peter's eyes makes you speak plainly. You describe Van Heemskerk's garden, the envelope, the parchment, the mystery. Peter nods thoughtfully. "People like stories," he says, "but they believe mysteries." He asks if he can write a short piece for a botanical pamphlet. No names, just an anonymous Harlem tulip merchant and a cryptic bulb. You nod. Why not? Let the myth grow roots. Historians still argue whether the pamphlets and broadsheets from this period fueled the mania or merely reported on it. But it's undeniable. Once a flower has a story, it's no longer just a plant. It's a symbol, a status, a speculative dream. By week's end, the bulb has been mentioned in 2 gatherings, referenced in 1 sermon. Something about vanity and fleeting beauty, and even sketched, badly, by a local art student who wants to immortalize the merchant of ghost tulips. Your face isn't in the drawing, but the cheekbones are flattering. You keep it anyway. Late one evening, Johanna asks, "What if it never blooms?" You glance at the drawer. "Then it'll remain perfect." She frowns. "Perfect how?" "Untested, unspoiled. It will always be what it could be." She lets out a sigh that sounds like both admiration and exasperation. You rise early again the next morning, though there's nothing urgent to do. Your body's gotten used to the rhythm now: sunlight, soil, strategy. In the garden, you spot a molehill. A fresh one, right near the plot. Panic flares in your chest. You dig with bare hands, frantic, until your fingers graze the bulb. Intact. Safe. Relieved, you set out traps. Not out of cruelty, but because you've risked too much on this sliver of color and hope to let it be eaten by something blind. As you work, the neighbor's boy wanders by. "Is that the magic flower?" he asks. You smirk. "Might be. Will it fly?" "Maybe." He runs off, delighted. You plant another bulb. Not rare. Just a plain red tulip. It'll bloom sooner and give the garden something to show in case visitors come by. A distraction. By now, you've got a system. 2 hours in the garden, 1 hour in correspondence, and endless hours balancing possibility against probability. One night, over supper, Johanna finally says what's been bubbling for days. "I think," she says, "we should stop saving for the cottage." You freeze. What? Because you're not going to retire. You're going to chase bulbs until your beard turns white and your knees give out. You can't argue. She's right. There's no retirement from wonder. She smiles gently. "Then let's use the savings for something else." You don't ask what. Later, you find out she's ordered a greenhouse. It arrives in parts: thick glass panes, sturdy cedar beams, a roof that tilts to catch the morning light. You help assemble it, hands numb from cold, heart warm from surprise. It's not large, but it's yours. And when it's finished, you move the precious bulb inside. Its own little palace of glass and dreams. You light a candle on the work table. It flickers, casting long shadows across the soil. You stand there for a long time just watching it glow. Maybe it'll bloom, maybe not. But either way, it's already made something grow. The days shorten. The wind sharpens. By mid-December, the streets of Harlem are slick with frost, and every breath steams like a chimney puff. The tulip beds, your once proud domain, now lie dormant under burlap and straw. But your greenhouse, your tiny cathedral of possibility, stays alive with warmth and quiet expectation. Each morning begins the same way. You light the lantern, unlock the greenhouse door, and step inside. The glass fogs behind you. Inside, it smells of damp soil and something sweetly vegetal. Your prized bulb rests in a terracotta pot, half buried, its skin wrinkled and firm. It hasn't moved. Not a sprout. Not a crack. You whisper to it sometimes. Silly things. Encouragement. Promises. Please. You don't tell Johanna about the talking. Instead, you make yourself useful in other ways. You help her pickle onions. You organize your ledgers. You even try once to sketch the greenhouse from the kitchen window, but give up halfway through the roof. Still, the bulb lingers in your mind. Historians still argue whether the Dutch obsession with tulips came from a genuine love of beauty or from a feverish desire to profit. You, standing here in the cold with dirt under your fingernails and no real plan, seem to sit squarely between both camps. One snowy evening, a letter arrives. Unmarked, just a folded piece of parchment in your mailbox. Inside, a single sentence. The bishop smiles at night. You stare at it for a full minute before laughing. Loudly, Johanna startles in the next room. You don't know what it means. It could be nonsense, or a code, or just a joke. But something about the absurdity of it fits perfectly with everything else in your life. That night, you sleep better than you have in weeks. Your dreams are strange. You wander through a marketplace where every stall sells only tulip bulbs, but they're made of glass, and when you pick one up, it hums softly like a tuning fork. In the dream, you hear your own voice saying, "Don't plant hope. Water it." When you wake, you write that down. You don't know why. The new year comes with a quiet sigh. No fireworks, just bells and clinking mugs and an extra candle on the table. You and Johanna toast to surprises, and she grins in that way that makes you feel like she knows something you don't. The greenhouse is still standing. Inside, the bulb now wears a faint moldy film. You panic briefly, then remember that some mold is natural. You gently wipe it with a cloth soaked in vinegar and say a small, ridiculous apology to the plant. Every tulip grower you know is dealing with the same anxiety. This winter has been colder than most. The rumors are thicker than ever. One friend claims to have a new hybrid that glows faintly in the dark. Another insists he saw a merchant trade a single bulb for a canal house. And not even a small one, he adds. You listen. You nod. You try not to roll your eyes. Because you know the real game isn't in what people have. It's in what they say they have. In a market built on fantasy, the loudest dreamer often wins. Still, your letters have slowed. The hype around your mystery bulb has cooled a bit. That's fine. Hype burns fast. Better to be a legend in waiting than yesterday's bloom. Then, one morning, as you're brewing your chicory coffee substitute, you can't afford real beans anymore. Thank tulip speculation. You notice something odd through the greenhouse glass. You squint. Is that? You drop the spoon and dash outside. There, emerging like a whisper from the soil, is a thin, green tip. Half an inch, maybe less, but it's real. The bulb has sprouted. You don't say anything. Not right away. You don't want to jinx it. Instead, you crouch there, breath fogging the glass, and feel something inside you stretch awake. It lives. You start spending more time in the greenhouse. Not obsessively, well, perhaps a little. But who wouldn't? Every day, the sprout grows taller, straighter. It leans slightly toward the east window, chasing the anemic winter sun. Johanna notices. So it begins, she says, setting a bowl of soup beside you one afternoon. The descent into madness. You kiss her on the cheek. At least it's a productive madness. But inside, you're terrified. What if the bloom is ugly? Or ordinary? Or worse, common? A few local collectors stop by for tea. They peer into the greenhouse, offer casual questions, leave vague offers. One man even offers to buy it unbloomed, an absurd proposition. You decline. It's too late for that. Now it has to flower. February arrives with storms and sleet, but inside the greenhouse, the temperature holds. The stalk is now a full foot tall. Its leaves a soft, fuzzy green. Still no bud. You dream more often. Sometimes of tulips. Sometimes of fire. Sometimes of music you can't remember when you wake up. One morning, as you light the lantern, you spot it. The bud. Pale. Tight. Curled like a sleeping fist. You exhale slowly. Soon, Johanna joins you later that day, arms crossed. When it opens, she says, "I want to be there." Of course, you reply. "You'll cry, won't you?" "Almost definitely." And you will. Because this isn't just a flower. It's a season, a gamble, a whisper of something too delicate to say out loud. In the days that follow, you watch it like a hawk. The bud thickens. Colors begin to tease at the seams. White maybe, or yellow. You can't tell yet. One night, as you write in your journal, you scribble something without thinking. History only remembers what blooms in the light. You stare at the sentence for a while, then underline it. It begins quietly, as so many important things do. No trumpet sound, no burst of heavenly light, just a faint pop, a whisper of movement, as the bud unfurls the first sliver of its petal to the air. You are alone when it happens. It's early, just before dawn, and the greenhouse breathes mist on its glass panes. You lean close, cradling your breath, and there it is, color. A shock of soft gold, edged in crimson. The center of the bloom is still shy, folded in on itself like a tightly held secret. But the outer petals sway just enough to prove it's real. Not a hallucination, not wishful thinking. It has bloomed. You do not cry. Not yet. You just sit down on a stool you placed there weeks ago, almost as a joke at the time, and let your heartbeat slow. The tulip is magnificent. No, not in the mythical queen of the night way that sells for fortunes. Not the fabled Semper Augustus, either, striped like a candy cane and nearly impossible to find. But yours is alive, vibrant, a golden glow with brushstrokes of red curling toward the tips, like flames trying to escape. Historians still argue whether certain tulips were naturally striped or diseased by the mosaic virus, which broke their pigments into fantastical patterns. You don't care. Yours seems untouched by illness or manipulation. It is simply beautiful. By noon, word has spread. Someone saw you lingering in the greenhouse too long. Someone else glimpsed the color not there the day before. Harlem's network of flower-obsessed noses can sniff out blooming gossip better than any hound can track a fox. By evening, 3 people have knocked. You answer politely. Let them peek. No, it's not for sale yet. They nod, smile tight-lipped, leave behind traces of envy so thick you could shovel them. One even tries to barter with a bottle of Portuguese wine and a velvet painting of a goose. You're tempted, but no, not yet. The next morning, Johanna joins you. She says nothing for a long time, just stares. It's warm, she whispers. Like the petals glow. You nod. I knew it would be beautiful, she adds. I didn't. She smiles. That's why I did. You cry then. Not the ugly sobbing kind. Just a slow leak of the heart. Relief. Pride. Exhaustion. 1,000 mornings condensed into 2 saltwater trails. You spend the next few days fielding more visits, more letters, more offers. One man proposes 5 rare bulbs from the Sultan's garden in return. Another offers a small vineyard in the south. You start to realize something. The flower is no longer just yours. It belongs, in some weird way, to the myth it's becoming. You give it a name, Aurora's Ember. Totally fabricated, completely unnecessary. But it sounds poetic and buyers love that. Tulip traders are funny creatures. They want the story more than the bulb. The origin tale, the tragedy, the genius, the miracle. Aurora's Ember, you say aloud to a potential investor, was the only survivor of a lightning-split greenhouse outside Delft. He gasps. You shrug. Lightning makes roots hungrier, you add, with a straight face. He nods solemnly. Of course. Of course. You sell a single offset of the bulb, just one, to a collector in The Hague for enough guilders to pay off your farm's debts and replace your moth-chewed coat. You keep the original. You're not done watching it yet. You even sketch it one afternoon, badly. The proportions are all wrong. But Johanna hangs it on the kitchen wall anyway, next to her dried lavender bundles. More letters arrive, some from abroad. A curious Englishman wants to meet. A mysterious woman named Margaret sends a pouch of crushed sapphire and a note that simply reads, "Does it sing?" You don't respond to that one, but you start to wonder what it would sound like if it did. The greenhouse has become more than just a space for growing. It's your sanctuary, your cathedral. You sweep it daily now, replace a cracked window pane, repot a few side bulbs. The original flower starts to fade. Not all at once. just a slow curling in. The outer petals brown at the edges. The color softens. The scent, faintly sweet with a peppery bite, lingers in the air like a ghost refusing to leave. You don't panic. You knew it couldn't last. Everything blooms to burn bright for a moment, then bow. Instead, you begin preparing for its next life. Carefully, delicately, you lift the bulb from its pot. It has multiplied. Small offsets cling to the mother like sleeping children. You cradle them in your hands. So much promise. So much chaos ahead. Tulip mania won't last forever. Historians will later label it as a classic example of speculative bubbles, right up there with dot-com booms and Beanie Babies. But right now, you have something priceless. A moment. A legacy. Oliviengember. That night, you and Johanna sit by the fire. The flower rests in a glass bowl on the table, half lit by the flames. "I'm going to paint it," she says suddenly. "Not how it looks, but how it feels." You nod. "I'll call it Hope Midwinter." You pour another drink. Outside, snow falls. Inside, your heart does not. Because even in a world that often forgets, misremembers, or flat out lies, there are still stories that bloom. And some of them are yours to tell. You're still riding the blooms high weeks later. Not just because of the guilders now tucked safely in your cellar box. Though yes, that does make it easier to sleep through the wind-whipped nights. But because of the way people look at you now. As if you're part magician, part prophet. You, the once nobody tulip merchant with ink stains on your cuffs and a cracked molar from years of chewing tough rye crusts, have become a subject of admiration, envy, even imitation. One morning, you receive a letter from the guild. Official parchment, serious wax seal, a touch too much flourish in the handwriting. They want you to speak at the upcoming horticultural gathering in Amsterdam. Not sell, not display. Speak. Johanna laughs when you read it aloud. You'll make them all fall asleep with your monotone. She teases. She's not wrong. Public speaking isn't your strength. You once gave a toast that caused a milkmaid to yawn so wide. She chipped a tooth on her spoon. Still, you accept. And a week later, there you are, standing in front of a polished wood podium in a smoky Amsterdam hall, staring out at a sea of bearded men and stern-faced women in ruffled collars. You take a breath, and you speak, not about the glory, not about the sale, but about the early mornings, the frostbitten fingers, the guessing, the grafting, the moments when you doubted everything, especially yourself. You even tell them about the moment Aurora's ember first bloomed, and how, for a moment, you thought you might faint. They chuckle. Some even nod. It's not a standing ovation, but when you finish, a dozen people come to shake your hand. One woman whispers, "You reminded me why I started growing flowers in the first place." That night, back in your rented Amsterdam room, you stare at the ceiling and realize you've become part of the story. Not a footnote, not a side character. You are now one of them. The growers whose names, eventually, will wind their way into catalogs and gossip and bedtime stories. Historians still debate whether tulip mania truly collapsed as dramatically as later writings suggest. The notion that people traded entire homes for bulbs? Possibly exaggerated, possibly not. It's the kind of thing where myth and reality get entangled like roots in an overcrowded pot. But collapse it will. You sense the shift coming. More sellers than buyers. More whispers of fraud. Some folks hawking fake bulbs, dyed onions, even. One man sold the same non-existent bulb to 5 different traders and vanished into the night. It's getting messy. You tighten your circle. Withdraw from the frenzied market just as it begins to teeter. You sell one more offset. Just one. Quietly. No name. No fanfare. And then you stop. You still grow, of course. It's in your blood now. But the greenhouse becomes a place of solace again, not speculation. You focus on cultivating new varieties. Subtler, less flashy, more fragrant. One of them has petals like aged parchment, cream with hints of lavender at the edges. Johanna names it Dust of Memory. Fitting. Your daughter is old enough now to help. She holds the water ink like a sacred object, pours with exaggerated care, whispers to each bulb as if it understands. And maybe it does. Some mornings, you catch her sitting cross-legged in the dirt, sketching. Not just flowers, either. Little beetles, broken pots, the twist of a hose. You don't disturb her. She's building her own language. You recognize it. Tulip mania's fever eventually breaks. Prices plummet. Fortunes vanish. People who once wore silks now barter for bread. You're mostly untouched. Not because you were clever, though you'll let people believe that, but because you stepped out just before the house of cards gave way. When they ask why, you shrug. I like the quiet better, you say, and you mean it. You still receive the occasional letter. A few still want offsets of Aurora's ember. Most offers go unopened now, but one letter you do respond to, from the curator of a botanical manuscript, requesting a painted contribution from your wife. Johanna beams. She works for weeks on a single page. Layers of pigment. Tiny, perfect strokes. You watch her paint long into the night. Candlelight flickering, hair pinned in a careless bun, tongue peeking out as she adds one more dot of vermilion to the center. When it's finished, the flower practically hums. That image, the two of you, one painting and one watching, feels more valuable than any ledger full of sales. The world moves on. The market moves on. New flowers take the stage. Roses from Italy, orchids from distant colonies. Even the humble potato gains fame as a miracle crop. But you're still there, still planting, still digging your fingers into the dirt each morning like it's a prayer. And in the quiet moments when the frost begins to melt and the first sprout peeks through, you remember that one glorious golden red bloom. And you smile, because while everything else fades, that memory does not. Winter again. You rise before dawn, as always, and the house is hushed. Even the hearth fire has gone out, leaving just faint warmth in the stones. Johanna still sleeps, curled like a cat beneath the woolen quilt. Your daughter, now nearly as tall as her mother, murmurs something in her dreams behind the wooden partition. You pull on your thick socks, worn through the heel but warm, and reach for your cloak. Out the door, the cold slaps your cheeks awake. The moon's still high, tracing silver across the canal's frozen surface. Somewhere far off, a bell tolls, 5 strikes. In the distance, a mill cart creaks over frost-hardened earth. You carry a small lantern, though your feet know the path. You pass the barn, the rooster too sensible to crow this early. Past the rain barrel, solid with ice. And then there it is, the greenhouse. Your sanctuary. Your stubborn, glass-pane miracle. You unlock the door, exhale, and watch your breath fog the air. Inside, it's quiet. Too quiet. For a moment, you fear the bulbs have turned in their sleep, rejected the cold, withered in their trays. You hover, lantern flickering across trays and pots and clumps of prepared soil. But no, there it is. A single green tip, pushing just shyly above the soil line. The first, the brave. You crouch, gently brush away a layer of mulch with gloved fingers. A deep breath. There it is, Aurora's ember, 3rd generation. Weaker color, slight curve in the stem. Not perfect, but alive. And that's all that matters. You move among the trays slowly, checking for rot, adjusting glass panes to let in a little more morning air. You hum, something low and tuneless. The song isn't for anyone, just something to keep the thoughts from shouting. You've been wondering lately, should you stop? Your back aches most days. Your fingers grow stiff. Tulip bulbs don't ask much, but they do ask for time, and you're not sure how many more springs your knees will take. But then, here's a shoot, and here's another, and another. They always find a way to come back. Historians still argue whether the tulip's power truly faded after the bubble burst. Some claim it vanished, disgraced. Others argue the love of the flower simply slipped back into gentler hands, out of the auction halls and into gardens like yours. You prefer that version. Makes the bloom feel earned again. By mid-morning, your daughter joins you. She brings 2 mugs of warm barley tea. You nod your thanks and sip, wincing at the heat against your cold teeth. She asks if she can name one of the new bulbs. You nod again. She holds a notebook, dog-eared, filled with sketches and notes and little made-up flower names that sound like spells. She flips to a blank page. This one, she says, pointing to a squat pale bulb. This one's Whisper Cloud. You pretend to consider it seriously. A bit dramatic, you say. She grins. You named one storm waltz. You nod, conceding. Fair point. Later, Johanna joins you with her brushes. She paints, your daughter writes, you tend. It's quiet work, but full. Every movement feels like a conversation. You think of the merchant who tricked you all those years ago with that first spotted tulip. The man who disappeared. You wonder what became of him. Whether he regrets it, or whether he's still out there, swindling. Then again, that tulip was beautiful. Maybe he gave you more than you realized. Outside, the town stirs. The chimneys cough to life. The bakery door slams. A horse neighs. But inside your little greenhouse, the past holds steady. You glance at Aurora's ember, now a few inches taller. No longer just a flower, now a legacy. And whether or not anyone remembers your name 50 years from now, the color, the impossible red gold flicker, that part endures. In the right light, it almost glows. The day winds down the way it always does, slowly, gently, like a candle burning to its wick. You close the greenhouse door with care, double-latching it against the cold night air. Your footsteps crunch softly through the frost as you walk back to the house, the soft glow of windows welcoming you home. Inside, the hearth has been revived. A small pot simmers, stew, simple and warm. The scent is earthy, comforting. You sink into your chair by the fire, heavy cloak still draped over your shoulders. Across the room, Johanna hums as she sews. Your daughter sprawls beside the hearth, sketching tulip shapes in the firelight. The air is still. The walls hold stories. And outside, beneath glass and frost and moonlight, the tulips rest. They do not worry about markets or coin or names. They grow because they must. And you too, battered by decades, bent by frost and fortune, you grow alongside them. Slowly, steadily, season after season, a rhythm of roots and patience. You close your eyes, letting the warmth sink into your bones. Outside, a wind begins to whisper across the rooftops. The kind of wind that speaks in soft sighs and ancient hushes. The kind of wind that sounds, just for a moment, like laughter far away. Sleep comes easy now. Your hands are sore. Your heart is full. And the tulips? The tulips will wait, just like they always do. Sweet dreams.